Here is one of a series of talks by spiritual leader Lola McDowell Lee, spanning 2 decades from the early 70s through the 90s. Lola was a Zen Roshi, whose Rinzai lineage included Dr. Henry Plutov and renowned Zen master Shigetsu Sasaki. Lola was a religious scholar as well as an ordained Christian minister. While the talks are focused mainly on Zen and Buddhism, Lola drew on many spiritual traditions, including those of Jesus, Plato, Lao Tzu, the Hindu Vedas, Meister Eckhart, and Gurdjieff.
One winter, during a training period at Sanyuji, the laymen and the monks assembled in large numbers on the days when Master Bankei would appear to lecture. Right near there at Niwasi, which is now called Gifu Prefecture, which some of you know where that is, more or less. Anyway, nearby in Niwasi, there was this sect called the Lotus Land, the Lotus sect, the Pure Land sect, Lotus. And the abbot of this monastery was a scholar, great learning, and he was very revered by his parishioners. And now at that time, Master Bankei's teachings were sweeping the area. I mean, people heard about this man, and what he talked about was the unborn. Interesting. The unborn in you. So even the abbot's parishioners went to hear him. And the abbot was seething, indignant, all upset. See, so he told his congregation, from what I hear, this Bankei is quite an uneducated fellow, which he was. He left school at an early age and went out and sat in a little hut in the backyard. Now, if I go and put a difficult question to him, I can stymie him with just one word. So, saying this, he went off to see this master. And here in this large crowd, in this hundo, in this monastery, he stood at the back of the room, and in the middle of the talk, he shouted in this booming voice, "Everyone here accepts your sermon and believes it. But someone like myself doesn't accept. If a person doesn't accept, how are you going to save him?" So, and this master, like they do have, what can I do? Fan. He raised his fan, and he says, "Come forward." So the abbot came up, and stood before him. And then Bankei says, "Come a little closer." So the abbot shuffled forward again. And Bankei looks at him and says, "How well you accept what I say." Yeah. And of course, the abbot was completely flustered, and he left without another word. So, okay? They do some strange things, and then you wonder why I'm strange. Oh. So now this ultimate truth, or this ultimate reality that Ling Fu wanted to know about, is what we call an absolute beyond all relativity. It is an absolute beyond reason. And so to this state, there are those who know it's there. You know? And we as human beings and sometimes know it's present. And so we have given it names. The Buddhists call it Buddha nature. Mystical Christianity calls it the Godhead, that which is beyond God, because God is personal. And then we think of God as personal. God is the Father. That's a personal God. And there is the Godhead, which is beyond. It's from whence God cometh. And then there is Ein Sof Hour, which is beyond Kether of the Kabbalists. And Islam calls it Allah, and Muhammad was his prophet, his messenger. The Chinese call it Tao. Yeah, lots of names. Islam says, the Sufi says there are 99 names, all of which are incorrect. And the 100th name, which is correct, you can't say. Yeah. Now, many centuries ago in India, there was a man by the name of Nagarjuna, and he was in the lineage as a patriarch of Buddhism. No. You know the lineage. Mm-hmm. And he set out this doctrine of shunyata, which is translated as emptiness. And he also had in this what is called the middle way. The middle way. And this is the basis of his doctrine, which is called Madhyamaka, the Madhyamaka Buddhism. The middle way. And it is extant in, it is abiding now in China. Well, I can't say now in China, but it did. And in Japan and in Tibet. A lot of Tibetan Buddhism is this Madhyamaka Buddhism. When all particular, these are particulars, huh? Particular. When all particular existence is reduced to emptiness, or to this shunyata, supreme enlightenment, they say, takes place. Yeah. And the pranya paramita, which we know as a hanya paramita, which is the Japanese way of pronouncing this Indian thing. The pranya paramita, the non-dualistic knowing. When there is this emptiness, when this emptiness is seen, is perceived, then the non-dualistic knowing is fulfilled. Absolute is non-dualistic. You can't have relativity in an absolute. Right? Okay. Now, in the early years in the Chinese lineage of Zen, prior to Wei Ning was the sixth patriarch. He was the last. Prior to, there was a man by the name of Fa Yong. And the Japanese call him Gozo Zenji, Fa Yong. And his teaching still is, on the pranya paramita. Now, this word pranya is a Sanskrit word, pranya. We interpret as wisdom. It's a transcendental wisdom. It means something like perception which views the emptiness. The perception which views emptiness is wisdom. Transcendental wisdom. And there is also in it the understanding that there is in it will. There is a force in it that we call will. And there is also this intuition, that we intuit something. And so in the use of it, and in following the prajnaparamita, the practice of meditation develops willpower. It develops determination. Eventually, as one is immersed in it, there is the ability that grows in the thing, the ability to handle oneself in situations. Now, this prajna, or this wisdom, is not an analytical process of reasoning. It doesn't work step by step. It leaps, as it were, over this abyss of contradiction. You know, if you have a pro and a con, you got a space in between. Now this wisdom leaps this space. It doesn't step by step reason it out. Because of this leap, this transcendental leap, you know, the paramita, this wisdom leaping, is reaching the other shore. Reaching the other shore. Now, prajna with its noetic quality, its will, leaping across the dichotomy to an awakening. We call awakening when one sees, one perceives now in this leap what is on the other side. And I say it every now and then. Don't try to imagine or speculate or conjecture, make conjectures or whatever about what is on the other side, because you're only fooling yourself. I've said it before, it's like going through a fence. Let us say it's not chicken wire fence, but chain link fence. It's a chain link fence. And you go through it. There isn't any gate, but somehow you go through it. And you're in this garden, all of a sudden. Very different from this garden here, but a garden that you could never, ever have imagined. Never. So don't try. Just get busy with yourself. So, shunyata, or this emptiness, is not a relativity thing, wherein we can compare this with that, or that with that, nor can we discriminate near and far. We cannot distinguish yellow and red. They aren't there. No. But it is not a nothingness. See? It is simply absolute. It is not relative. It is absolute. Simple. Now, when an advocate or a follower or a person that's into this Madhyamaka says that all things are empty, he is not expressing a nihilistic point of view. He doesn't mean that all is completely gone and zero, that there is a zero. Now, I went to a Christian Science lecture once. I went to several. And the man there he was talking about atoms, atomic energy, and so on and so on. And he said, when you finally get to the very point beyond the atom, you would find a zero. And the way he was talking, I thought then he really meant zero, because he didn't know what he was talking about. He had a memorized speech, and he was giving it. Because at one place, one time he's going on and on and on and on about this. And he says, oh, I overlooked something. And he went back, he says, I'll have to go back to this point. And he had to go back to this point, and then he put something in there. See, just totally by rote. So when he said zero, I thought, I don't think that somebody who really knows Christian Science, who knows where it came from and all that, would take that viewpoint. They would say zero, but they would mean it is not nothing. They may say zero, but it's not a nihilistic nothing. The person who says everything is empty, rather than being nihilistic, he is just saying, this is all you can say about it. This is the truth. And I can't show it to you. And because it cannot in any way, shape, or form be placed into language. Or in any mental system. You can't put it in there because it is absolute. And mentally we are dualistic. We're relative. Now when one says in the Zen teachings, emptiness is within the 5 aggregates. Emptiness is within the 5 skandhas, and you've heard me use that phrase before. And they're the aggregates. The aggregates of existence. This phenomenal world that we see is an aggregation. It's a coming together of elements. Atoms aggregate into molecules. Molecules build up and aggregate into cells. Cells aggregate into blood, or organs, or bones, or muscles. These are the aggregations. And within all of these aggregations, there is not a self-existing reality, however much it may appear that way. When you look at this body, and you look at the flesh, would you say this flesh is a self-existing entity? A self-existing reality? No, you can't. It is made up of particulars other than itself which have aggregated. So where's the self? I mean, you never mind you. Yes, this is consciousness. This is something else. Where is the self of the body? Where is the self of the bones? Where is the self of your liver? Well, at one time they thought this was so, so that when something went wrong with your liver, you could talk to it, and tell it, the god of the liver, and you do all kinds of nice things to make whatever was making the liver bad would move out, so that the self of the liver could take care of itself again. There was a time we thought like that, Yeah. But in all these aggregates, there is emptiness. Yeah. Within each particular form, there is formless. And that's the sutra that we sing. So that God is eminent, the absolute is within each particle, and it is also transcendent. This is the universal reality of all things. God eminent and transcendent. Now, to be able to perceive this reality of the God eminent and transcendent, or form is formless and form is form. A follower of the I'm going to say it the other way. The Madhyamaka uses a process of negation, which is the theme of this sutra that we chant. And so we have enumerated in that The eyes are empty. The ears are empty. The mouth is empty. The nose is empty. Everything is empty. Consciousness is empty. The eye must be empty, otherwise you could only see one thing. It would come to the eye and it would stick there, and that you would be blind to everything else. It's got to keep on emptying so you can see. The same with the ear, so you can hear. The same with the mouth, otherwise you would have had your first meal and last meal a long time ago. And the same with smelling and touching. Yeah. Now they talk about also these 5 negations. Non-discrimination, non-judgment, non-attachment, non-purpose, non-ego. Now, in our thinking, in our observing, and our reactions, and so on, the placement, shall we say, of the thought, of the actions, reactions, that are discriminating, that are clinging, that are full of desire, that are purposeful, that are preferential. Have you ever looked at that in yourself? I mean, really. When you prefer something, do you look at that thing and then at your preference? And why do I prefer this? Why do I cling to this? Why do I want that? And then as you see yourself doing this, to look at it, not just to find the opposite of it, but the transcendence thereof, the wisdom thereof. This Fa Jung and some of the early masters, he said, and they did too, all talk has nothing to do with one's original nature, which can be reached only through emptiness. The ultimate essence of things is what is most important. But in this realm of illusion, it becomes different from what it is. The nature of reality is invisible and cannot be grasped by our objective conscious mind. That's what he said. So now here comes this dilemma. We have got a big problem. A big problem. How really to understand this? How to realize what is this ultimate essence? What is this ultimate truth? When we can't think it. We're told we can't think it. So how are we going to know it if we can't think it? Our good, logical thinking. We in the West, we've been so proud of our mental achievements. Rightfully so. And they have done so much. We have done a lot with our minds, even in this country, for the last 200 years. They've got a threshing machine, and they've got snow plows, and refrigerators, and washing machines, thank you, and dryers, thank you again. Yeah. So we have crossed oceans. First in a ship with a lot of sails and people at the oars, and then came the steam, mind of man, both. We have crossed oceans. The mind of man has taken man to the moon. It has taken man under the waves of the ocean. It is really tremendous. Oh, these automobiles we run around in. Huh? The mind of man has created that. You know, it is tremendous what the mind of man has accomplished. Well, and I can only speak for myself now. You know, I don't want to go to the moon. I don't want to go to Mars. I don't want to colonize space. No, not really. I want to know who I am. Who is this that finds itself in this place? And why? Why do I think like I do? I want to know about life. And so I must think about death. I want to know where I'm going eventually. And I cannot think correct answers to these questions. Whatever I think would only be a speculation, a conjecture, huh? Or I would borrow it from what somebody else thinks who speculated about it. Or somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. Huh? Answers can be had. Correct answers can be had. But they have to be unthinkable answers. Then you can think about them. Yeah. So Fa Yong says further, all hindrances to the attainment of wisdom are originally non-existent. So how'd they get there? All your hindrances. Every cause and effect is nothing but a dream. The great Tao is formless and boundless. It is free from thought and anxiety. Free from thought and anxiety, it is like a pail of water when the bottom is dropped out. When nothing retains the water, all is dropped and negation is complete. All is dropped. So we come to this little monk who asked Uman, what will happen when the leaves fall and the trees are bare? And Uman simply answered, golden wind. You know, and we played around with this for a little while, these past few days. Yeah? Now, wind is probably one of the best images of non-attachment that we can think of right at the moment, of this shunyata, this emptiness, the wind. The New Testament alludes to it, you know, and it says, the wind bloweth where it listeth, and ye know not from whence it cometh, or whither it goeth. You don't. The wind is not attached to anything. The wind is empty. It doesn't make it bad, does it? It's empty, but it's very present. You don't say it's nihilistic. The wind is there. There is a movement of the air. Yeah. And we say it's empty. Oh, it may pick up leaves, and it picks up dust, and it picks up water, but the wind itself, as you well know, is empty. Yeah. And so it was Robert Louis Stevenson who wrote this little poem, you know, who has seen the wind? Neither I nor you, but when the trees bow down their heads, the wind is passing through. And I don't know the third line of the second verse, so I'll skip it. But have you seen the wind? You can see the wind. Now, Basso was an old-timer, you know, a long time ago, China. And he used to sit cross-legged when he was a monk all day, and he would sit in a type of what they call the quietist meditation, which is a passive. It's a sort of a contemplation, just sitting there peacefully. Spent hours at it. Yeah. And now his teacher, who was a Nangaku, and he lived from 677 to 744, something like that. So when I say long time ago, it was a long time ago. Yeah, early days. He saw him there doing this day after day after day, newly arrived at the monastery, you know. But he went over to him and he says, what are you looking for, thus sitting? Oh, my desire is to become a Buddha. You know, that is to be an awakened one. You know. And so Nangaku stooped over and he picked up a piece of brick that was lying there, and he began with his sleeve to polish it. And he polished and he polished and he polished, and after a while, Maozo couldn't stand it any longer. He says, what are you working on, my master? Well, I'm trying to turn this brick into a mirror. You know, this teacher of mine is crazy, you know. No amount of polishing is going to make a mirror out of that brick. Sir. Yeah. If so, no amount of passive sitting as you are doing will make of you a Buddha. Yeah? So then Baso looks at this and he says, well, what should I do then? And this teacher says, it is like driving a cart. When it moveth not, will you whip the cart or the ox? Nice teacher. Now, a reality experience would be sometimes we usually call a realization. We realize something about ourselves. We realize that we don't think it, you know, because the realization is different than a mental picture. And a realization, the perception of this emptiness, is the foundation of awakening. Mental understanding and realization are very often confused, particularly when a student feels, well, it's time for me to show something. You know how it goes. So we pressure ourselves. Oh yeah, maybe I can do this. You don't say maybe I can get away with it, but that's what you're thinking. You know. So here comes this thing that came about of throw it down. You know, which we went into here a few weeks ago. This monk came to this teacher and said, I am empty. I mean, after all, he's following the Prajnaparamita thing all the way in the way of negation, and he says, okay, so now I'm empty. And to which this teacher said, well then, if you so, throw it down. How can you throw down emptiness? No. Well then, pick it up. See? This monk had thought emptiness and had convinced himself that here is this little thought sitting in there that says empty. You see, and there's nothing else but this little thought that says empty, so I'm empty. Throw it down. Well, I can't do, how can you throw away emptiness? Well, then pick it up. See? The insight into the depth of mind was missing. Now, this depth of mind, to see the mind and then to go into the depth of the mind, when this is perceived, it is called the wonder of Zen. And it is this wonder that is the real introduction to Zen. The real introduction of Zen itself now. Before this, we've been sort of skirting around it, like we were sizing up the situation. We do this for a long while. It's kind of like a cat coming on a strange object, It goes around it this way. It's like the kitty, my kitty, you put a plate of food in it and she goes over to the side here and smells it from over here first. See if it's safe. Which strange object that she's feeding me now? Is it really edible? We do this in our minds. We skirt around this thing. See, it's difficult to plunge in. But Zen makes very much of this via negativa, to go the negative way, which does not mean it's negative. It's just this doctrine of Nagarjunas. However, this wonder of Zen now, this perception of the depth, this insight, is going beyond a negation. I mean, comes a time when you can stop saying it's not this and it's not this and it's not this, which is only the beginning of the negation. Yeah. Let us say that at the beginning we have a thesis. That is, we have a thought. We have an idea. It's a concept. Huh? And let us say, roses are white. This is our nice beginning thesis. We're going to give a long talk on roses are white. And then somebody comes along with an antithesis, the opposite thereof, an opposing point of view, and says, no, roses are red. See? Then someday, when they can get together, this is followed by a synthesis. Now roses are pink. See, the red and the white, the thesis and the antithesis, this is a linear. The synthesis is up. There is a positive and there is a negative, linearly speaking. And then the other is vertical. See, positive and negative. This is real over here, and over here this is unreal. And now comes the vertical, which is what? This is real and this is unreal. Which is what? Now, we do this a great deal of the time. In a logical synthesis, the concept, the synthetic concept, remains based on positive and negative, the thesis and antithesis. And this is not an inner experience. Now, Gregor Mendel, the Moravian monk, who is the father of genetics, comes into the picture. Because he did his thing with sweet peas. He had white sweet peas and red sweet peas, and lo and behold, he got pink sweet peas. And then they forgot all about him for a long, long, long time. And then up popped again. Genes and chromosomes, the heredity factor. The little stories, the koan, which have grown out of conversations between the student and teacher. And we talk about them quite a bit. And we try to explain somewhat, even though they're not explainable, explanatory. It's difficult to talk about. Very often misleading and many, many, many times misunderstood. But we have to try. How else is there going to be an opportunity to have something so that you can work on it, so that you can have a glimpse of the secrets of yourself, of your self-nature? We're not interested in the secrets of the psychological secrets. You know those. Nobody's interested in that. But our minds should be led. You're leading your mind with your thinking all the time. In this way, you've got the cart before the horse. Huh? You're leading your mind, So let's bring it back and get something in there that leads it in the right direction. Like taking a horse to water. Horse drinks, he will satisfy his thirst. If he doesn't drink, he is not going to know the feel of wet, cool water in his mouth. Now, this absolute, if we follow the Prajnaparamita Sutra, there is in it suchness and emptiness. The absolute is suchness. Okay. This is not subject to the laws of relativity. Our dualities, hot and cold, near and far. This body, this conditioned state, this aggregate of conditions, is also a nobody. It is what they call a rupa arupa. Rupa is body, and is the negative thereof, and it's nobody. See, there is a conditioned body, and there is an unconditioned body at the same time. See, the formless, the emptiness, and the form. Now, it is difficult, as I keep saying, it's difficult to talk about, but we want an answer. What do you possess whereby you can grasp this formless emptiness? You do have something. Oh, yes, indeed you do. Yeah. All our usual, everyday, ordinary knowledge is concerned with relativity, with the dualities. It's up and down, it's near and far, it's pro and con, and I'll do it this way, no, I won't, I'll do it this way. See, no, maybe not, I'll do it this way. No, I'll do it this way. Yeah. Now, this emptiness and the absolute has none of this in it. It doesn't have any duality, nor does it have any discrimination, nor does it have any judgment, nor does it have any purpose, nor does it have any ego. No. So how is one going to take a hold of this state? How are you going to get it in your hot little hand? Huh? How are you going to get it? Yeah. Well, I don't know how I'm going to do it, so what good is it? Yeah. It is no value for me. No. It doesn't even come within the sphere of human interest. If you can't see it, and you can't touch it, and you can't pick it up, how can it be of any interest to any human? So let us have nothing to do with it. It must be some kind of spooks or something. Yeah? But the truth is other. Emptiness constantly falls within our reach. It is always with us. It is always in us. It conditions our knowledge. It conditions our deeds. It conditions our activities. And it is the very life itself. Of what value? In all your cruising around in your head, have you ever asked yourself, Of what value are you? You act as if you were pretty damn important. Of what value are you? You know, try and just meet it head on. But then when we try to pick it up, and we want to hold it as something, then it eludes us. As soon as you think about it, you've missed. Isn't that a perplexing state to be in? Yes. Now, this Fa Yong was, to begin with, a Confucian scholar. And he then became a Zen master. He studied all the Confucian things and so on, and was very learned. And then he found the Prajnaparamita, and he studied that, and he realized, you know, what was a ferry boat that takes us to the other shore, and he switched to Buddhism. And he did become a Zen master. He shaved his head, and he went up into the mountain, Mao, you know. And he stayed there in a rock cave north of a monastery. And there are lots of legends about him. The fourth patriarch, his name was Dao Sin, H-S-I-N, which you may remember. I find your memories are not very good. H-S-I-N is translated as either mind or heart or soul. And here's this man's name, Dao Sin, the absolute mind, or absolute spirit, or absolute heart. He must have been something to have achieved a name like that, because that's certainly not the name of a mountain. Uman was named after a mountain. He moved on Mount Uman, so he was Uman Zenji, the teacher on the mountain, Uman. Yeah, that's what they did most of the time, but not this guy. So, anyway, this patriarch, he's cruising around in his little village around his monastery, and he goes out every day and he looks around, and he's looking at this mountain, Mount Mao, and he looks at it, and he conjectures, he gets this idea that there's an outstanding man living on this mountain. Must be. So he investigates, and he is told that, there's a man that lives up there. He's known as Lazy Yung. So he went there to meet this Lazy Yung. And when they were face to face, and they had their bows and all this stuff, you know, and Fa Yung recognized him as a master, Zen master, he asked him if he knew Dao Zen. And this Zen master replied, "Why do you ask?" "Because I admire him greatly, and I intend to pay my respects." So then this man says, "Dao Zen is my humble name." And Fa Yung looks at him and says, "Why have you come here?" "To find you." And they became teacher and student. So after which Fa Yung did come down from the mountain from time to time. Instead of hiding himself up there, he would come down to the monastery and he would lecture. Now, in the year 650 to 655, in between these years, there was a shortage of food. So every day, this man, Fa Yung, left the mountain and went 80 li. Now, do you know what a li is, an L-I? It's a little more than a mile. Something like. Anyways, he went 80 of them, wherever they are, you know, every day. And he would, he'd start out early in the morning, he'd come back in the evening, and he would be carrying on his back 8 pecks of rice which was enough rice to feed the 300 monks in the monastery for 2 meals. And the next morning he went out again. Years. He's quite a man, huh? Yeah. See, now first in his practicing, you know, he had just simply immersed himself in the negation. You know, sitting there all alone on a mountain in this cave, and he built himself a little hut. And then, you know, with this pranya paramita, and he immersed himself in that. Then comes the middle way, and he immersed himself in that. Yeah. Now, in his talks, Fa Yung systematically presented these 3 aspects, so they were carried along and became part of the foundation of Zen. Right? Pranya and shunyata, wisdom and emptiness. 2 aspects of an inseparable reality. Just as we have inside body and outside body. Without both, we wouldn't be. And, you know, this guy would say when someone would come to him with the realization of this emptiness, he would say, oh, what clear seeing, huh? Yet there's nothing to see. Huh? Neither a man nor a Buddha. So precisely, they stated, such clear seeing. Now, after this Fa Yung, there came a young chap by the name of Yung Chia, and he was a member of the Tendai sect. Tiantai, they call it. We call it Tendai. Now, one of the most essential contributions, now remember, all this you study in your sitting. One of the most essential contributions of this school is the theory of the threefold truth identified as one. If you have positive and negative and zero, that's threefold truth, identified as one. The real, the unreal, and the synthesis. And now, the real has reference to the emptiness, in which all differentiation is nullified. There's no differentiation, no dichotomy, no discrimination whatsoever. Sometimes called non-existent. It's the real. The unreal has reference to what we call common truth, our everyday, ordinary stuff, our empirical world, our world of appearances. And then this third aspect, or the middle way, in Nagarjuna's teachings, it does not have a position between the two, between the real and the unreal. The middle way doesn't. Oh, no. It transcends both the real and the unreal, and simultaneously embraces them. And this is not a mental concept. It is an experience. Now, I'm going to give you a very crude example. I mean, very crude example. But it'll put it in your head. Luther Burbank, you know, he picked up where Gregor Mendel left off. That's why I mentioned him way back then anyway. First he looked at lemons, and then he looked at oranges, and he looked at lemons, and he looked at oranges. So he had a thesis and an antithesis. He looked at lemons, they were not oranges, and here are these oranges, and they were not lemons. Right. Now he brought these two together in a synthesis, and guess what? He had a grapefruit. And the grapefruit embraces both the lemon and the orange, and yet is something entirely different. You mean you don't understand that? Well, anyway, now comes an interesting point. This threefold truth, the grapefruit. the three in one. Right? See, so we have this threefold truth. The truth with the three aspects to it, huh? Out of which there comes threefold meditation. Threefold meditation. And from these three meditations, we wind up with three eyes. Three of them. Huh? There is the Dharma eye, the wisdom eye, and the Buddha eye. One to see each of the wisdoms. Now, the 10,000 things, that is all of these appearances, the 10,000 things vary from one to the other. Yellow is not red, and red is not green, and green is not blue. Right? Right. A short stick is not long, and a long stick is not short. How do you know the difference? Oh, that's neat. Huh? How do you know the difference between a short stick and a long stick? Now, on seeing the multiplicity of differentiations in their interdependency as to how they aggregate and all that sort of thing, they are interdependent. Everything depends on something else. You take your very body. The flesh, the muscles of your body are dependent on the bone structure. The bone structure is dependent on the marrow. The marrow is dependent on the blood. I mean, you can go on and on. Each thing is dependent on something else in this aggregation. To see this multiplicity in this interdependency, we call the Dharma eye. I mean, to really see it. Yeah? And now we take silence. Silence never varies. Silence is shut up, it's silent. And there's a special quality about real silence, and that quality doesn't waver. If you've lost it, you're no longer silent. Huh? That which can see this silence is called the wisdom eye. When one is free from both non-differentiated reality and differentiated materiality, one has attained the vision of the Buddha eye. See? Now, I'm going to misquote something here. Every one of us should turn his own light within himself. Ever since the beginningless beginning, that's not you in particular, that's we, you have walked away from your own light and entered into darkness. That is, you entered into ignorance. Surely it is evident that false thinking is deeply rooted and very hard to dig out. Many means have been contrived, but these means, most of them, are rather like distracting a child with a yellow leaf to stop his crying. Yeah. This teaching, so simple, so clear, is like a shop which offers all sorts of merchandise, including gold and jade. The merchandise is sold according to demand. When a man comes in for childish toys, he will get childish toys. That is the demand. If he comes for true gold, he will get true gold, for that is his demand. It is up to each and every one, and meaning this time, you. It is up to you. It is up to you. It's as a teacher once told a student, there are three things. Three things I cannot do for you. I cannot eat for you, I cannot go to the bathroom for you, and I cannot be enlightened for you. Right? Now, we have come to the end of the week of Sesshin. And we have that chapter under our belt, as the saying would go. And as we get up now in a minute to leave, we will bow to the Buddha to thank him. We thank him because even if we didn't have a great enlightenment, we had a small enlightenment. If we did not have a small enlightenment, at least we didn't get sick. If we got sick, at least we didn't die.
If you find Lola's talks valuable, more will be posted in weeks to come.